In today's grammar lecture, we'll be looking at resumption, focus, and coordinated subjects. Let's begin by looking at resumptive pronouns. A resumptive pronoun is a phenomenon brought about because of a relative clause, where a pronoun in one clause resumes the reference from a previous clause. In number 1, I have the relative clause put in brackets, and I have the resumptive pronoun underlined. Let's read the sentence by pronouncing the resumptive pronoun. Marissa is the woman that I proposed to her, where I have this with an asterisk because it's an ungrammatical sentence in that speakers don't say it that way. Instead, speakers leave a gap here. They pronounce it, Marissa is the woman that I proposed to, where you strand the preposition, leaving it without an object in this clause because it's simply understood from the previous clause that the person I proposed to is Marissa. So, in English, you almost never get resumptive pronouns, unless, like in 2, it's a pretty long and complex sentence. I'll read it with the resumptive here. Marissa is the woman that when I was 21 years old and in the middle of my seminary degree, I proposed to her. Where that sounds pretty good, at least a lot better than number 1, and probably a lot better than if you were to leave the gap here. Marissa is the woman that when I was 21 years old and in the middle of my seminary degree, I proposed to. Now, maybe you don't like either of those sentences, and so you've already thought about how you can rearrange things so you don't have to deal with the resumptive element. And this is the reason why you almost never see resumptive pronouns in English writing. You're far more likely to hear them in speaking, where you can't delete, you can't edit, you can't do a do-over. Where you're speaking, the sentence got pretty long and complex, and in order to aid your listener, you stick in a resumptive pronoun so that they know exactly what you're talking about, what you're referring to. But in Hebrew, resumptive pronouns are way more frequent, and they're even obligatory in some cases where the sentence is quite short and not complex, like number 3. Hamakom asher ata omed alav. Literally, the place that you are standing on it. Where for Hebrew, the it is the resumptive pronoun. It's masculine singular because it's resuming the reference from this masculine singular noun in a previous clause. But for English, a literal translation is really bad. The place that you are standing on it, that sounds really bad. And so here's a case where resumptive pronoun, it's obligatory in this sense for Hebrew, but the equivalent in English, you have to avoid it. What can account for the difference? Well, pretend with me that the English sentence at some underlying level is actually equivalent to Hebrew. And so if underlyingly the English is the place that you are standing on it, why does the English end up looking so much different? Well, it's because English has 2 syntactic repairs for avoiding the resumptive pronoun that you don't get in Hebrew. Let me explain. So, one repair in English, you can just delete the resumptive pronoun and strand the preposition. We saw this in the previous slide, and you can get this in English translation. The place which you are standing on sounds to me like pretty good English, even though prescriptivists say never end a sentence with a preposition, even though people do it all the time. The other repair that you can get in English is that you can delete the resumptive pronoun and you can take the preposition and then move it to the front of the clause. The place on which you are standing. And that sounds like even better English. Now, neither of those repairs is something that you can do in Hebrew. So you can never strand the preposition by deleting the pronoun. If you have a preposition, the preposition needs an object. Also, you can't take the preposition and then move it to the front of the clause. Every relative clause has to begin with asher or some other relative pronoun. Number 4 is another example with a resumptive pronoun in Hebrew. Matecha asher hikita bo et haor. your staff that you struck with it, the Nile. This is a sentence that we saw in a previous story, where it here is a resumptive pronoun, masculine singular, because mate is masculine singular. Now, interestingly, if at an underlying level, English looks exactly like Hebrew, one of the syntactic repairs is not allowed for this sentence. You can't just delete the pronoun and strand the preposition. So, your staff that you struck with the Nile is bad. Instead, what you have to do in English is you delete the pronoun and then you move the preposition to the beginning of the clause, your staff with which you struck the Nile. And so this is one reason why resumptive pronouns are so frequent in Hebrew. The reason is if you have a prepositional phrase that is obligatory within a relative clause, then the resumptive pronoun is also obligatory. So alav here is obligatory because you need to state where Moses is standing, and then bo is obligatory here because you want to disambiguate that mate is the instrument with which Moses struck the Nile, not that it was the object of striking or the thing that was doing the striking. Next, contrastive focus. In this section, I have to bring up topic again. Both topic and focus are things that Hebrew communicates by means of word order. Topic I brought up in chapter 15. Topic you can think of as an anchor. It's what the sentence is about. Focus is a contrast, this as opposed to that. Now, not every sentence has topic and focus. For instance, topic, you can have a sentence just carrying on a topic that was established in a previous sentence. And not every sentence has focus. If everything's in focus, then nothing is in focus. And so when Hebrew marks something by means of word order for topic or focus, it's important to pay attention because that's an important exegetical detail. Now, how do you tell whether something's in topic or focus? If something that's not the subject occurs before the verb, then that thing has been fronted for either topic or focus. Only context can tell you which one it is. Number 5 is an example where you have an object pronoun fronted before the verb marked for focus, and both sides of the contrast here are stated explicitly. Ki ata gam otcha haragdi, ve'ota hecheyeti, where this is the angel speaking to Balaam, because by now also you I would have killed, and her I would have let live, where you have object before verb and object before verb in this clause as well. And you have both sides of the contrast, where you have you are the one I would have slain, as opposed to her, and she is the one that I would have let live, as opposed to you. Number 6 is another example where the object is fronted before the verb and both sides of the contrast are made explicit. Ve'hargu oti ve'otach yachayu. Abram speaking to Sarai, and they will slay me, but you they will let live, where you have in this clause verb object, but in this clause object verb. Object is fronted for focus. You, Sarai, is the one that they will let live as opposed to me. Number 7 is similar in that you have the object fronted before the verb to mark it as contrastive focus, but this time the contrast is left implicit, not explicit. So when you're explaining the passage, you have to bring out both sides of the contrast. Davar ma yar'eni Adonai vehigadti lach. This is Balaam speaking to Balak. A word, what Yahweh will show me, I will speak to you. So here's the contrast. Balaam speaking Balak. I'm not going to tell you whatever you want to hear. No, I will only tell you what Yahweh shows me. That and only that is what I will speak to you. number 8 is very similar, but there's one key difference that we'll get to. Ve'ach et hadavar asher adaber elecha oto ta'aseh. And only the word that I will speak to you, that you shall do. The difference is that you have a resumptive pronoun here. Otherwise, the structures are identical, right? You have davar, you have some kind of relative clause that modifies davar, and then you have a verb. But here, there's no resumption, and here, there is resumption. Resumption here marks a different construction. If there's something before the verb and there's no resumption, then that's called fronting. If there is something before the verb and resumption, then we call that extraposition. Now, with fronting, there's no resumption. Fronting, that can mark either topic or focus. Extraposition, the thing that is put before the verb, is the topic. It's always topic. It's what the sentence is about, and then later on, you'll get the focus. And the focus is again determined by word order. If the resumptive pronoun is put first after the relative clause, then the resumptive pronoun is in focus. If there's something else that occurs before the resumptive pronoun, then that thing is in focus. Okay, so here's how I would explain it. This is God speaking to Balaam, and he's saying, Balaam, only the word that I will speak to you. Okay, so in the future, I'm going to speak to you a word. And then he drives home the focus after establishing the topic. Okay, Balaam, that word that I will speak to you, that, and nothing else, not whatever you want to say or whatever someone else wants you to say, only the word that I will speak to you, that is what you shall do. So this is what we've seen today. You can have something before the verb that is not a subject. When that happens, if it's fronting with no resumption, then that thing has been fronted to mark either topic or focus. If there is resumption, then the thing that was fronted is marked as the topic, and then word order will tell you what is being driven home as the focus. And finally, coordinated subjects. In Hebrew, when you have two singular subjects that are joined by vav, you would expect to have a plural verb. And indeed, this is what you can get, as in number 9, Vayikberu oto Yitzchak veYishmael banav. And they buried him, Isaac and Ishmael, his sons. Where you have Isaac and Ishmael doing this burying action, and so the verb is plural. But what is more frequently the case is that you actually have a singular subject, as in number 10. Vayikach Avram veNachor lahem nashim. And he took Abram and Nahor for themselves wives. Where Abram and Nahor are taking for themselves wives, but the verb is vayikach, not vayikhu. So why? There are actually two questions. The more basic question is a syntax question of how come a singular verb is licensed in this environment where it seems like there's more than one actor. And that question is actually quite complex and not quite appropriate for a first-year Hebrew class. The other question, which we can talk about, is the pragmatic question, where there seems to be a choice that the author can make with coordinated subjects between a plural verb and a singular verb. So if it's a choice, why does an author do a singular verb and why a plural verb? And the most common answer is that the singular verb highlights the first person as the primary actor. I'm not entirely sold on this explanation because it doesn't seem to always fit, but it certainly fits here, where you have Abram and Nahor and they're taking wives for themselves, but Abram is a principal actor. One question is, well, why is Nahor still being mentioned? He's being mentioned because later on, Isaac is going to take Rebekah as a wife for himself, and Rebekah is a descendant of Nahor. And so that line is being mentioned here. But Abram is being presented as the principal actor because we're in Genesis 11. Next chapter, God's going to come to Abraham. And then the whole rest of the Hebrew Bible is about Abraham's family. And so it's only proper that Abram here is being highlighted as the principal actor.